Hi there! So, in 2015, 14 years after their last new series was created, Nintendo Studio EAD released this odd-looking kind of third-person shooter called Splatoon. Although completely different from most of Nintendo's other games, it went on to become a big hit with a dedicated fanbase and high sales. But how did this unique shooter come about? Well, let us find out as we dive into Splatoon's development history. The year was 2011, and Nintendo had just released their new console, the ill-fated Wii U. A group of developers decided to form a team and develop a totally new game. There was Hisashi Nogami, who had just finished developing the console's built-in software, Tsubasa Takaguchi, who had just finished work on Nintendo Land, Shintaro Sato, who had just finished working on New Super Mario Bros. U, and quite a few more. Now, for their new game, they didn't want to develop another entry in a long-running series. No, they wanted to create a brand new experience with brand new gameplay. Nogami told the team, let's make a new kind of game, without worrying about trying to fit into existing game genres. But of course, that's easier said than done. They needed an actual idea. And so the team started to brainstorm, and brainstorm, and brainstorm. Eventually, after 6 months, they ended up with over 70 different ideas. Wow. The team were quite competitive with their brainstorming. If they saw someone else coming up with an idea they liked, they would take it and try to do it, but better. This process meant that eventually they ended up with some really great ideas. The idea that eventually won out was developed by Sato. In it, 2 small tofu-like cubes moved around a maze, shooting ink and trying to steal each other's turf. They had little noses so you could see which way they were facing, which were also where the ink was shot out of. Now, this prototype was actually quite well developed already. 4v4 online multiplayer had already been implemented, which led to a pretty fun testing period for the team. Unlike in the final game, the TV displayed an overhead view of the arena, and the Wii U gamepad displayed a 3D view of your tofu's perspective. Now, what really made the demo work was the act of hiding. You see, if you looked at the TV screen, the tofu completely blended into the ink that made up its own territory. That meant it was hard to track down members of the opposite team. You had to wait until they entered territory that they hadn't inked yet. After playing around with this prototype, the team decided to go ahead with the idea. It needed a little refining first, though. You see, hiding was an integral part of the game, but it only half worked. If you looked down at the 3D view on the gamepad, you could clearly see the opposite team's members, wherever they were. To fix this, a mechanic was added where you could lay low and blend into the ink, whether from above or in 3D. Next, they thought about characters. Marketing-wise, tofu isn't the best, so the team started trying to think of some more friendly-looking and lovable characters. First, they tried a human-looking character. Surely the player would instantly bond with them, right? However, this broke the hiding mechanic, because now you could see where the opponents were on the map. Not super clearly, but enough that things like ambushes wouldn't work at all. Oh dear, the team was stuck. What could they use if not humans? They considered turning them back into tofu, but they thought, how many copies could we sell with tofu? Okay, back to the drawing board. Well, there was one obvious character they could try. Mario. After all, Mario Sunshine was all about Mario shooting water, so he'd be an almost perfect fit. Well, the team wanted to come up with a new character, rather than using one of Nintendo's pre-existing ones. According to Nogami, we wanted to come up with the play structure from scratch, and then create a design to match the structure. So we didn't want to borrow a pre-existing character. So, something else. Well, the team decided to try out rabbits. Why rabbits? Well, it actually makes a lot of sense. Firstly, rabbits are white, so it would be easy to tell if they'd been inked or not. Plus, their long ears would mean you could see from above which direction they were pointed in. Out of rabbits and tofu, it was a pretty easy decision. Neither. Well, we'll get to that. Another thing the team added were maps with depth to them. At first, this seemed like a great idea. Not only did it make the maze seem more real, it also allowed players to shoot ink at the walls as well as the floor, which was fun. Yay. However, a problem arose because of this. Inking the walls was kind of pointless. The territory your team captured was calculated using the overhead map, so the ink on the walls actually achieved nothing at all. However, if they didn't let players ink the walls in this 3D world, it felt weird, like something was missing. Another dilemma. Still, other than that, the game was progressing fairly well. Now, if you're trying to get a game marketed at Nintendo, it can go two ways. Either you're developing a new entry in a long-running series, Mario, Zelda and the like, in which case it's super easy to find a team to market your game. Or you're developing a new series altogether, in which case it's a lot more difficult. The team decided they'd show off their game even this early in development to get the department used to what the game was like. However, when they showed it off, the responses were fairly lukewarm. They had a lot of, I guess it's fun, and, well, I don't really get it. What was it now? Well, quite a few people didn't really understand the choice of characters. Rabbit shooting ink was a little out there, perhaps. Sakaguchi decided to write a list of all the functions they needed the characters to perform. One sentence he wrote said, "A motif where it makes sense to be shooting ink." After reading it back, Sakaguchi wrote next to it, "Squid?" You see, the team had previously thought about using squids, but it never really seemed quite right. But now they were considering using a character that could transform between a sort of camouflage mode and an ink shooting mode, and squids seemed perfect for the camouflage mode. Just like the tofu, they could completely blend into the ink. For the shooting mode, they decided to use a more humanoid form. This way the player could really customize how they looked and grow attached to them. Using squids also solved the earlier problem the team had about the walls. Now inking the walls had a use, allowing the player to swim up them. After all, if the squids could swim through the ink on the ground, why not the ink on the walls too? It was perfect. Of course, the team still had a lot of work to do. They knew now that they wanted to use transforming squid humans, but they still weren't really sure what they'd look like. If the character could transform, it would make sense that they'd look like a cross between a human and a squid, as if a squid had turned into a person. The designs the team came up with of this looked really weird though, not very visually appealing, and it was difficult to tell the difference between the squid form and the humanoid form. Some of the other team members gave suggestions for other aquatic animals to try instead, like a sea angel, which is okay, I guess, and a sea slug, which is, no thank you. Sakaguchi was still confident in the idea of using squids though. There was just the question of what they should look like. Then developer Amino muttered something under his breath which turned out to be incredibly helpful. If you can switch between a squid and a human, then the squid should look squid-like and the human should look human-like. Yes, that was it. Keeping the characters separate helped you organise the team's ideas, and kept the sea slugs out of the game. After that point, the character designs hardly changed at all. Solving the problem of the characters also helped to finalise the game's theme. Before this point, they had called the camouflage action hiding in the ink, but since the characters were squids and all, calling it swimming made a lot more sense. Because of this, the programmers added a camera shake, the effects team added a splash effect, and the sound team added not only a splashing sound, but also muffled the music when the player was underwater. Or I guess, under ink? Anyway, because of this solid thematic foundation, the development team had a lot of leeway of what to add to the game. One of the staff members was really into street fashion, for example, so that made it into the game. It was the same with the music. The developers saw the turf wars as kind of a rebellious thing, similar to skateboarding, so rock music was added to fit their image. At E3, the team showed off a demo of their game. It might have seemed like the game was almost complete, but in reality only about 10% of it was done. There was only a single weapon, a single stage, and the order of events was just a mock-up. Basically, they had their work cut out. Every time a new weapon was added, it would be painstakingly tested, tweaked and balanced until it felt like a new style of play had been made available, but not the best style of play. Developer Shintaro Sato stated, "If this was just a one-player game, we could make an ultimate weapon that players would enjoy playing with. But since it's a competitive online game, we took those 10 months to adjust the overall game balance, so each weapon had its pros and cons." And finally, on the 28th of May 2015, Splatoon was released. It was hugely successful, becoming the first major new IP Nintendo had developed since Pikmin. The developers of the game had started to worry late in development that some people might mistake it for being shallow because of its cute graphics. As indicated by the passionate Splatoon community, however, I don't think that was an issue. Sato and Amano were playing their game not long after it was released, and they said to each other, "We made a really fun game, didn't we?" And so they did. Hi there, thanks for watching to the end. So it's 2019 now. Wow. As they say, new year, new me. Well, sort of, anyway. Firstly, I have a Twitter now. I made it a little while back, but the voiceover for my last video was recorded before I made the account. So anyway, follow me if you're a Twitter person. Other than that, I'm planning on potentially starting a new series on this channel alongside this one. I'm not totally sure though, we'll have to see. Anyway, I think that's everything. Bye!